Hello everybody, and welcome to what I hope will be the first of many Bluefin webinar follow-ups. One of the things that came out of our webinar yesterday about Fiori was that we didn't do enough technical stuff. So myself and DJ Adams are hopefully going to spend the next, well, however long it takes, going through some of the more technical aspects of SAP Fiori.
Yeah, some of the stuff that we didn't get around to covering, really. We had an hour, we filled it up. It could have been another 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours. Actually, some people said it was too technical, but there's always a balance to be had. Anyway, so one of the things we talked about, just to sort of glide back into where we were yesterday, was the different types of apps, and also the structure of an app. We talked towards the end of the webinar about architecture. So let me just share my screen for a second. I'll share my whole desktop.
And just to point out, we did get a number of questions coming in yesterday during the webinar, and we're hoping to answer those over the next couple of days, hopefully through a blog post. There were some technical questions, some architecture questions, some security questions. So if we don't cover them either here today, then I'm sure we'll cover them over the next few days over a blog post.
Sure.
Or two.
Okay, so on my screen you can see one of the slides that we had, which was a screenshot of a typical transactional app. It's a typical transactional Fiori app. And one of the things we sort of stressed was that the master detail pattern, which is what you can see here, master list on the left-hand side, the left third, and detail on the right-hand side, the right 2/3, is a classic sort of pattern used very often in transactional apps.
You see it everywhere. You see it on the iPad. You see it on most desktop apps these days.
Yeah, and actually, this is a bit of a digression, but there we go. That's really cool. On smartphones, what happens because the split container or the nav container, which is the control that sort of manages this, does the right thing and has some intelligence on a smartphone, which is one of the devices that Brenton didn't mention. All you see first of all is the master.
Yes.
And then when you select an item, it slides out or flips out, and you see the detail.
Yeah, it's about making the best use of the space you have rather than trying to miniaturize, which is something we've all seen over the last few years. Take a website that was designed for a browser that size, put it onto a phone that size, and nobody can use it.
Exactly. Maybe if we remember later on, we can switch emulation mode in Google Chrome Dev Console and see what it looks like. So this was a transactional app, and what we were talking about towards the end of the webinar was what it looked like from underneath. And we were talking about the fact that apps are to be self-contained, which means they can run within, or they run within a container. A container being the launchpad, for example, or even just a normal component container within an index.html, within a standalone file. So it's basically a reusable component or a reusable app. And a reusable component can be anything from as small as a single button with some logic behind it, some intelligence behind it, or a full-blown app. And all the Fiori apps that we can see on the standard Fiori launchpad, those are all built as components, right? So we start out at the top here with this component, which is, in fact, why don't we have a look? I've got a copy of the SDK here. So if we have a look at the API reference, we have this abstract class SAP UI core UI component, okay? And basically, all the components that have a visual element inherit, eventually from this UI component.
Yeah, so they all come from the base class, let's say.
Yes, exactly. There's also a type of component, actually, while we're on the subject, which is a non-visible one. If you want to build a service that has something happening in the background, for example, and that's just a component, right, rather than a UI component. Anyway, I digress, but digressions are always good. So we've got a component, and that component has definitions in it. For example, root definitions. So we talked about navigation in the webinar yesterday and how you navigate within an app.
Okay.
So moving from the master, selecting an item in the master, and then
going through the detail and perhaps drilling down even further, maybe into a table or even down further.
Exactly.
And I think you'll see a lot of that kind of routing, let's say, as you go through analytical apps quite a bit, because obviously you dive deeper into the data to try and understand it.
And fact sheets as well.
And fact sheets, of course, yes. Exactly.
So, and routing is also about taking care of sort of, let's call it external navigation, navigation from outside into a certain part of the app, so into an app, for example, the purchase contract approval app, where a particular purchase contract has been sort of pre-selected.
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, that's the root definitions for the navigation part of a component. You also have metadata as well, which we'll have a look at that when we dive deep inside in a minute. But of course, a visible component has a visible element, clearly, and that visible element is typically, in the Fiori app level scale of things, a view.
Yes.
Right? That view is defined typically in XML. We'll see that. And that view is like an outermost container view, and it will contain then
your master and your detailed views.
Master and detailed views, yeah. But those master and detailed views are sort of organized and orchestrated. I just came up with that word. I think it works though. By a so-called navigation container, like a nav container or split container, a split app, or even an app, for example.
Yeah.
But as far as Fiori apps, transactional apps are concerned, it's usually a split app or an ancestor of a split app. And that type of control has two aggregations: a master pages aggregation and a detail pages aggregation.
Yes.
You can sort of get the idea. Within the master, you've got a view. You don't have to have a view; it doesn't have to be a view. It can be any control. But typically, in a Fiori app, it's going to be a view. So you can have this sort of ultra MVC, ultra model view control thing. So we can have separation of concerns.
And then you just keep going down the tree as you add more stuff in. It just keeps going down the hierarchy.
Turtles all the way down.
All the way down.
All the way down to the bottom. Which, in this case here, we've got the view within the master. The view has its own controller, of course, but then visibly the view's content is a page. And a page is a really nice sort of self-contained design thing as well, from a UI perspective, UI5 perspective, and also from a Fiori perspective. It's a classic thing that you see on a typical Fiori page. You've got a nice little header. You might have some buttons, navigation button on the left-hand side. You'll have a footer, maybe, like a grey footer.
And then inside that, you might have a table as well.
Yeah.
So therefore, you're again, going down the tree.
Yeah. So within the page, you've got a list. So that's the list that we saw before, the list of purchase contracts to approve, for example.
Yeah.
In detail, you've got a very similar structure, but instead of having a list of things, you've got the detail of one thing. And there, the first thing in that detail is this object header, which is a classic sort of UI5 design thing as well, which shows the details of a particular object.
Exactly, but equally it could be anything. You could put another list over there if you want.
You can put whatever you want in there. You can even write your own controls, extend existing controls, write your own controls. Use those. So let's have a look at a typical Fiori app. Let's see if we can find these individual things.
Definitely.
Okay, so I've got our...
DJ, do you have a lot of errors there?
Yeah, but there's to err is human. To really mess it up, you need a computer, as the saying goes.
Yes.
Anyway, I don't really care about these errors. In fact, there we go. They're gone. No, let's leave them on. And in fact, let's clear the. There we go. We've got somewhere. I've got one of the catalogs here. There we go. There's our understanding SAP Fiori set. So here's approved purchase contracts. Now notice the network tab. Let's clear all the stuff. So the Chrome developer tools are really, really useful to find out what's going on. If I hit approved purchase contracts now, that app should load, and that app in terms of a component. You notice here actually that we're still on the same URL. Okay, Fiori Launchpad. So we're still within the Launchpad.
I was going to ask about that because that's changed over the past few years. So originally in Wave 1 we would have sseen unique URLs for each application. Yeah. So what's actually changed there?
Fundamentally, the whole. Wave 1 came out mid 2013.
I thought you were going to say 20 years ago.
20 years ago. No, don't you start on my dinosaur attributes.
Listen, you brought it up. I'm just saying.
I'm proud. Dinosaur and proud. Anyway, where were we? So in the first wave of apps, the ESS, MSS apps, they had this concept of a launch page, which was very similar to what we saw before the tiles.
Yeah.
But the architecture was slightly different, and each app was launched in its own separate page, separate URL.
Yeah.
Whereas here, we're in the same URL, and the components, which is because a fairly new concept, are these self-contained sub things loaded in on demand. Okay. So you can see here, for example, right at the end of the URL, in the hash part of the URL, we've got purchase contract approve.
Oh, that looks like an outdated URL.
Don't get too excited. Yes, but you're right. Absolutely. Well, it's actually, I suppose that the workflow task collection, the word collection is ringing the bell here. Absolutely, it's an entity set, right? So exactly. And as you can see here, that particular thing is work item ID 6019, which is this thing here. Notice actually that we're not seeing the whole split up. We're not seeing the master in detail like we saw in the screenshot. So where's the screenshot? There it is there. Why is that? Because of the responsive design. So it's clearly worked out that the real estate isn't big enough to show the master detail and the master list and the detail. So what it's done.
So this comes back to giving the best possible user experience. I mean, at the end of the day, what we were saying about miniaturization, you don't want to show everything when the screen isn't big enough to show everything. So let's just show what you need to see.
Exactly, show what you need to see. So actually, let's just drag that over here a second. Let's see what happens. There we go. Ta-da!
Excellent.
I'm going to drag it back again. Notice there's a table of items down here. I don't know whether it's going to do it or not, but let's just have a quick look. So just keep your eye on we've got a description, a quantity, and a subtotal. This is a sap.m.table control. Really nice control. And we'll pop in. Sorry, we'll lose the master, but then there we go. We start getting pop unders. Okay, that you can define when you define your table item template. You have individual cells in the table, and you can define whether a cell should disappear altogether if the screen real estate isn't big enough, or whether it should pop under. And you can see this 100 each value for the quantity column has popped under, so quite nice.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're thinking about that on an iPhone, for example, that would be now unusable if it tried to go all the way across.
Yes.
When it puts it underneath, yes, it makes the cells, a bit chunkier, let's say, but they're a lot easier to read.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, let's just we weren't going to go here before, but S3.view, we know this. I know this is that view there. I think it's that view anyway. Let's just have a look. Layout data. I don't think you can do a search on here. But format. Oh, that's the form. We don't want the form. We want the table, don't we? Icon tab filter. It might be in a. Oh, there we go. Demand popping. Column demand popping. Minimum screen width, medium. Okay. So that's for the second column. So we got the first column here in this table, which is the description.
Yeah.
There, and you've got the next column, which seems to be a quantity. Which is from the There's the label, which is actually that word quantity, and you can see the internationalization greater than sign because it's sort of XML inception, and then view.purchase contract. So that's part of the resource bundle, which is the translatable texts, and then you actually have the the definition of that column says, I want you to pop in.
Excellent.
Rather than disappear.
So in this case, if I'm reading it correctly, because this is actually new to me as well, you look at the description label. That doesn't have a demand pop-in, so that's always going to show no matter what, whereas the others will pop in based on the real estate that's available to us. Yeah,
so the whole idea is that it's responsive design, but you as a coder have to lift your finger a little bit and describe what has to happen in these circumstances.
Which is actually quite a departure from the traditional, let's say, way of coding screens, especially for the desktop, where you code it once and you kind of go, okay, roughly I know we're always going to be dealing with 1024 by 768 as a resolution, so therefore we can always put stuff side by side. You think
those
about
websites best viewed. In Internet Explorer 4, 800 by 600.
800 by 600. 600 by 480. That was the best resolution.
600 by 4. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so that was the popping. Where did I get to me? Oh, yes. So we were having a look at the
responsiveness.
If
that's a word.
Yeah, I think it's a word. We actually also talked about this green button.
Yes, my green button. But you said it's not green. It's semantic go.
Yes, semantically go or semantically approve.
Semantically approve. So let's say, okay, so DJ, I'm coming along to saying, okay, as a business, I don't want that green. I want it red because actually I don't want to encourage approval. I want to discourage approval. So turn it red for me.
Okay, I'll turn it red for you. Well, what we need to know is that a button, when you define it as a type, where's the type? There we are. And the type is defined in this sort of enumeration button type. And the button type, you can have all these sorts of things here.
Accept back. Oh, that's cool.
So if we say, you set me a challenge now.
I have set you a challenge.
So what we can do first of all is say, okay, well, let's have a look at that. We can see from that little yellow tooltip there, the ID of that element is _ button 1. So it tells me straight away how to get a handle on that. And it also tells me inherently, implicitly, that the programmer hasn't assigned an explicit ID themselves to that. So the UI5 runtime has, because the runtime's current ID prefix when it generates IDs is __, and it then takes the name of the control, or the last camel case part of the name.
Okay, and then just increments upwards.
Increments upwards.
And just one quick question before you continue, because I mean, I'm used to seeing this set of screens. You know, this is the debugger in Chrome, for example. But have you anything extra installed that's allowing you to do what you're doing here now?
No, nothing at all. It's just standard.
Yep.
Chrome is the new runtime. I think it's almost the new IDE as well.
Absolutely.
But anyway, that's another story.
Yes.
So what we're going to do is we're going to grab that, grab a handle on that.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's this thing called sap.ui.getCore.
Okay.
Now we can say
underscore button.
And we've got it, but too much, that's a lot of typing. So what I quite often do is say grab reference to that. So I can say, okay, a button grab.
Done this once or twice before.
Yeah, I mean, can you see that? But shall I make the thing a little bit bigger?
Yeah, I think I was able to see it, but I think if you type slightly slower, but it's definitely coming across.
You know, one font bigger.
Mm-hmm.
One font bigger. That's not quite right. Anyway, oh gosh, I was walking down Chiswick High Road yesterday, and my eyes were insulted by this restaurant that had the restaurant name in huge letters, and the font was Comic Sans. Would you go into that restaurant? No.
I probably wouldn't notice, DJ, but you know,
it was terrible.
I'm just saying,
it was terrible. Anyway, so we've got that button, and we can just in fact, let's just get rid of this. There we go. We can say button dot set type, and then we can say sap.m.button type. There we go. We can accept, or what do we want? Reject. Ta-da! Okay.
Excellent.
So yeah, there you go. Is that better?
Okay, challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. Okay, that's the first third of the pint you owe me.
Okay,
anyway,
fair enough.
So anyway, why did we come here? Oh, that's right. We came here to have a look at the component. So this is our approved purchase contract app within the Launchpad. Within the Chrome developer tools, you can have the source code, of course, component. Notice that we've got a couple of components here. We've got this component. I've set the debug source on in UI5 so that we can actually see the non-minified.
Okay.
But here's a component .js, and here's a component .js. But I can tell it's this one because this is the functional area MMPC, materials management purchase contract approved, whereas that's to do with the actual
KPI
tile for it.
Okay.
So this is what we want. Let's have a look at that. So let's just take a minute. Oh, yes, there we go. So this is where the component's declared. jQuery.sap.declare ui.stp.mm.percontract.approve.component. So the whole idea is that this is the definition of the component.
Okay.
And so that will cause well, when the component is instantiated, you give the name, which is ui stp mm per contract.approve, and then the UI5 runtime will go and look for a file or URL. It will make an HTTP call for that, plus the word component.js.
Okay.
And it'll find it, and this is what's inside it. Notice actually that this is inheriting from this component base, not from the core that we looked at before, but from this scaffolding, which is a set of common stuff for Fiori developers in SAP to use so that things are more consistent. It's a very, very high level description of what that is. But,
You mentioned that's for SAP developers. You mean that's available to those of us who want to write our own custom apps?
Yeah, it is. So, I mean, it's in the library. Yeah.
Excellent.
The fact that we can actually instantiate it, where is it called? sap.ca. There we go. It's there. For example, MD.
Perfect.
Yeah. There we go. Actually, notice that we've got this application facade. We'll talk about that in a bit, actually, about when we go into models. Okay, so we've got the component. What else is in the component? We said this is metadata. These are the libraries that are required. These are control libraries that are required. Notice that there's no sap.ui.commons, for example, because that is a non-responsive. It's a collection of deliberately non-responsive controls.
Whereas the sap.m ones are.
And M is for responsive.
M is for responsive.
In fact, M is for responsive. Da, da, da. M is for responsive.
I recognise that guy.
Yeah, that's very handy. Yeah. So we've also got navigation. Okay, so the way that navigation works is, I'm not talking about navigation too much today, but the way that navigation works is it's a pattern matching thing, and it will tell the component, or it will tell the router, what views to instantiate if they're not already instantiated, and where to put them.
Okay, and I can see placeholders here for example, there's work item ID, PO number, and that kind of stuff under the item details. Yeah,
exactly. So these are sort of matches and grabbers.
Yeah.
A bit like the brackets in a regex.
Yeah.
Sort of. And there are sort of mandatory and optional things you can do. I think the optional ones I can't remember in colons. Maybe there's not. Oh, scenario ID is an optional one. Anyway, that's the navigation. And down here we got the create content. Okay. And you can see here we're instantiating a view.
Yep.
The view name is that.
Yeah.
That will cause an HTTP request to be made for the URL blah 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 UI S2P MM per contract approved dot main dot view dot XML because it's XML type.
Yes.
Okay. And we'll go and see if we can find that reference in a minute in the network tab.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, here this was written in the days before, in the days of yore before. So components these days have their own event bus, which is really cool, which enables developers to be completely self-contained.
Yes.
There is a global event bus.
Yes.
And I think when these were written, by the looks of it,
it was only using the global
event bus. So to prevent sort of developers clobbering each other, or clobbering each other's things, it looks like they're sticking on some sort of prefix here. Right?
But also, you're not reliant on any other, areas in the web page to run parts of your application.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is quite interesting. So you instantiate this view, and then you return it. You give it back.
Yep.
So let's have a look for that view. It was the main view, right? In fact, why don't we just look for all the views?
Exactly, but we should be able to spot them quite with that prefix, the mn dot.
Yeah, we should be. But even easier is we'll just look for anything with view.xml.
Yeah.
And so we can see the main view, that was the one that was requested.
Yeah.
And we've got this split container here, which is probably the most interesting so far, even though there's nothing in it. So the split container is this thing here.
It's your master detail view.
It's the master detail view, exactly. It's the master view and the detail view combined into one thing with navigation and everything.
Yes.
The reason
parent, it's the parent of our page.
And the reason why there's nothing in the master pages and the detail pages is because rather than explicitly and sort of statically, almost as it were, define which views go in the master and which views are in the detail, the router takes care of that. So there we go. So anyway, that was the master. The master details pair, main split container. And you got the master view here.
Yeah, and our S2 and S3.
Yeah.
So based on the fact that you showed us S3 earlier and changed that button to red, I'm going to assume that S2 is our list.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Good assumption. Now, it's beautiful actually. In that XML views, I know that people know I've been going on about this for a long time, but XML views are very, very nice. Very concise, which is unusual for XML, but also you can sort of, looking at it, see the structure of the page in your head, matrix-wise, matrix style. If you looked at the equivalent in JavaScript, I think structure-wise it would be more difficult to get a picture in your head of, what was netted inside of what.
Absolutely, and there's nothing worse when you're dealing with a JavaScript constructor view of trying to figure out exactly how it constructs it, because there's no obvious pattern to follow.
Let alone the nightmare closing bracket scenario. Anyway. That was an audio interpretation of the closing brackets, by the way. So we've got here, we can actually really, really easily see it. In fact, one of the things that we can't see, as we said before, is the master. Now, there's different modes. For the split containers, there's different modes. Let me just bring up this console here. What we're going to have a look at is this thing here. We know that's part of the container, the split container, and in fact, let's have a look at that. There it is. Oops, sorry. Click that. You can just about see. Sorry, just about see. Go away. Sorry. That's true. Right. Let's select that one. Right. Let's start looking again. You can just about see here. The thing is so long, the tooltip's it's too wide. But you can see down just below my hand, it's container.
Yeah, container hypermaster.
So let's just click on that and bring it up there. There it is there. So you can see let's copy that in there. Just stick it in there. That's what it looks like. So that's the ID of the image on the button. Okay. But it also gives us a clue as to actually there's the ID of this master split container. So let's just grab that. Okay. So let's say split container equals. Still there. That we want just to there, right? There we go. We've got the split container like that. Now the split container can work in different modes, so it can sort of have a different type of way that it works depending on how you prefer your split containers to work. So at the moment, the split container is show hide mode, as in it hides it and shows it. But you can also change it to split container set mode. Split up mode. And there's one called stretch compress mode, which is quite useful for debugging because it will force show the master.
Ah, very nice.
You can always see the two things together.
Very good.
So there's the S2 view, and that's exactly right. So to show you that the S2 is the master, and it's got the list in it. You can see classically here, this is a classic Fiori design. It's such a simple concept, but it's so effective. The Fiori design stipulates in this area that whatever you see effectively in your list, you should see in the object header in the same places. So here you've got vendor domestic 00. There's the object. So there's the object list item. And there's the object header. There we go. Let's just have a look. There we go. There's the object header. And you see there it says XML view 60 -- header. Because it's chopped off the last camel case thing of the object header, and there we go. And then we've got the status, which is there. We've got the numeric, whatever it called, what's it called? The number.
The currency.
Yeah, sorry, it is the currency, but in terms of. All right, I might look stupid, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
And so on. So that's a really nice, some really nice design principles that the UI5 teams in SAP. And the designers in SAP have done an absolutely amazing job, I think. This, it's just so good.
And actually, as a testament to that, one of the things we definitely came across recently when we were doing an implementation, it was a wave one, but I mean, it follows all the same principles, was that when we came to the actual go live of the project, and we sat down, and they said, "Oh, let's talk about putting together some training material." The response from the user was, "I don't need any training material. I can just use this.
Because
I don't need to understand it any more than this."
Yeah, if you need training, there's something that's gone slightly
right.
Yeah. So you mentioned actually OData.
Yes.
So there's
my favourite topic.
My favourite topic. Yeah, my work here is done.
Yeah, I know.
So there's the workflow task collection. Let's have a quick look to see if we can find what OData service this thing is using.
And just for anybody, I mean, I'm sure you've probably been living under a rock if you haven't heard of OData and you're on this call. But basically, when you're talking about OData, you're talking about your data source, which is completely decoupled from your UI layer through MVC style. So when we're talking about OData is an open standard of data exposure and consumption, which is what I love about it is the self-describing aspect of it, but it's restful. It's all the good stuff that we want to see.
It's not completely restful, but it does take a lot of influence from representational state transfer. But yeah, absolutely. One way of describing it, which I don't like to use, but it sort of gives you, it's ODBC for the web. It's not, but there is this concept of create, read, update, delete, and query. Okay?
Yes, there is.
It actually came from
Microsoft, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but before Microsoft, it came from the public at large.
Oh, okay.
So RSS, yeah, it came from RSS effectively.
Yeah.
So RSS, feeds, lists of a feed of items. Then there's all sorts of kerfuffle about RSS and holy wars and stuff. Won't go into that. And out of that came another standard called Atom. Okay, which was effectively the same sort of thing. The header, feed with a header, and it had a number of items. But then came the Atom Publishing Protocol, which was all about being a protocol rather than a format, and it was a protocol to manipulate the things, so manipulate the feeds and manipulate the items in the feed, so we could add an item. So if you're blogging and wrote another blog post, you could insert that in there, right?
Exactly.
So the Atom Publishing Protocol, APP, and the Atom format eventually became, via Microsoft, OData.
Yeah.
So that's why you still see references to things like feeds and items. And in fact, if we go to services dot, this is completely random now.
OData, oh, North Winds.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just picking a random OData.
And this is, by the way, this is an absolutely great resource to program against if you want to test out a client or anything like that. I've written several iPhone apps against this site.
So there you go. There's OData's ancestry in full view, feed, and then you have entries.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway. And I mean, and if you ever want to prove that SAP are absolutely embracing OData as their standard for data exposure, you just need to look at stuff like, well, obviously what we're looking at here, which is gateway. You need to look at SMP, and it has its integration gateway. Absolutely, OData is the direction we're going.
Yeah, and look at that. Olingo is a Java library, client and server, and also, not also, but supports 2 and 4.0. Where did Olingo come from originally? SAP. So SAP have open source. Anyway, that's another digression, which is...
of course, you just said Java, and I'm leaving the room. Just saying.
I know. It was in passing. Anyway. So we've got... one of the constraints of a Fiori app is that it consumes one and only OData service, for reasons we won't go into right now. But workflow task collection. We know that this is a transactional app, so we can take a good guess that it's coming from our app stack, and therefore we can take a good guess at sort of the URL pattern that's going to be relevant. So if we search for OPU, maybe a bit bigger, because we know that that's
a good bet.
OPU. I think it sounds like occasional platform user or something like that. So it's when Gateway was being born inside of SAP. Yeah. So when it was the idea of lightweight consumption by people. Okay. Occasionally as well on a platform.
That's good to know.
For your user. Anyway, so there we go.
What I love about these URLs is they're so readable. Yeah. The fact that you literally can look at it and understand exactly what it's doing right in front of you.
Exactly. So there's a workflow task collection. And we can see that workflow task collection, let's click on that.
It's getting the top 100, ordering by...
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
We've got headers there. There you go.
Yeah. So it's getting the top 100. It's ordering by...
Created at.
Yeah, and the description...
Oh, descending.
Oh, sorry, descending, sorry. Inline count all pages.
Yep.
Yep. On the SAP client 120.
Yeah, and there we go. And there's the results, which should turn out to be... There we go, these things here.
And of course, the other thing we didn't mention at all is the going back to OData just for a second, is the interoperability between XML and JSON.
Yeah.
You just decide whichever way you want to go.
Oh yeah. So actually, what was that last thing we had up there? Not Olingo. Where is it?
North Winds.
Products. That was a wild chance.
Yeah.
Service.
That's not going to happen.
There. So we got products. Yeah. Dollar format. Yeah. Dollar format is an OData thing.
Exactly.
And you can say, give me that in JSON format.
Now, I think you use the same plugin I do. Is it that orange JSON plugin?
Yeah.
Which actually brings it up in that really nice format. Otherwise, reading that in Chrome is horrific.
Where is it? Yes, I can't remember what it's called. It's so good, I forget it, and it just works.
Actually, we might do a follow-up webinar. I was thinking on some of the tools we use, because I think between you and I, we're always chopping and changing which developer tools we're using on our machines on any given week or month. So. Follow up with that. But yes, JSON view is a very good one, and then the other one is the XML one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, XML. So that was pretty. Oh, there's one more thing which is probably worth looking at right now. Oh yes. So we looked at the views. Let's go back to that S2 view.
Yeah.
There it is, and there's the controller. View.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go. I did notice that a minute ago. Look at that. Woohoo! Extension point.
Oh, excellent.
So there's an extension point that's been added by the SAP developer with a there we go, get it, with a view to allowing the developer like you and me to add an extension at this point. I think that if we go to the documentation, the SAP documentation, we might see detail about this. And it just so happens that since yesterday I was hacking this morning on that Fiori app.
Which will show again the one with the webinar with the list of apps.
Yeah, where is it? Projects. There we go. App analysis. Okay, and let me just bring up this. I'll bring up the emulation mode.
So just for those of you who weren't on the webinar yesterday, what you're seeing in front of you is a quick app that DJ put together when he was on the train yesterday, just before our webinar, which details all of the SAP Fiori apps and just, well, presents them in a readable way, so you can search through based on type, based on our 3 types: analytical, transactional, or hybrid.
That sort of stuff. But what I've just done this morning, I think this is the right version. 1 second. Fiori docu. I'm on app detail. Right. So if I emulate a smartphone, what I've got now is, if I just choose one. In fact, where was it? Approved purchase contracts. There we go. Purchase orders, purchase contracts. Oh no, it wasn't. Yeah, approve. Where is it? Approve purchase contracts. I get the pop-up details. Woo! Which we didn't have before, and then I can click on that.
And it takes you to the SAP documentation.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And hopefully, there's a pattern here, and for each of the apps, you get a history, implementation, extensibility. So extensibility, let's have a look at that one. Ooh, look at that, Ext list item info, which is exactly
the enhancement what we saw a few minutes ago. Excellent.
So there we go.
I like the fact that we're getting into a situation where enhancing these apps is normal, because no matter where you're implementing these, you're going to find you want to add in maybe a custom field that the business needs, or you need to change something in the existing application, and that's a great way of doing it.
Yeah.
And you're also covered then in terms of enhancement packs in the future that might bring added functionality, and you can definitely implement that.
Yes. So that's that. So how are we doing for time, by the way?
Yeah, I think we're going to finish up in a couple of minutes. Oh, that's me on your screen.
And that's me on my screen. Yeah. So I think that'll do for now. We don't want to, take too long on these things. But
no, but I think one of the things we wanted to bring up is that obviously this is the first of what hopefully will be many of these webinars coming up, covering a whole range of topics. So it'd be great to get your feedback on these. What you liked, what you didn't like, what other topics would you like either myself or DJ or any of the other members of the Bluefin innovation team to discuss.
Yeah.
So we're more than happy to do so.
Okay, so until next time, we need a really cool sign-off, but I can't think of one. So I'll say goodbye.
See ya.